Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I know everybody's nice and tired on the last day of the show, so appreciate your attention. There once was an AV consultant, and he would call me regularly and ask the same question. And the question was about this project that my company did the control system programming for. And it was a pretty cool project. It was a multi-zone, multi-purpose room with lots of floor boxes and a big matrix and display video projector lifts that kind of rotated so that they could set up the room in any orientation that they wanted. And the customer had purchased the service management application for this system. Now, a service manager is typically used to monitor all the devices in your system and be alerted when things go offline, maybe do some light control for some first level support from a remote location. And you could also collect data so you know how the systems are being used. But on this project, and a few others I've been involved in, it was never installed. So this consultant would call me and say, "What are we going to do about the service manager?" And I'd ask him a few questions. I'd say, well, who's going to install it? Where will it be installed? Will our system have a connection to the same network where it's installed? And most importantly, what data points need to be monitored? What does the customer really need for his system? And the consultant would graciously thank me for my questions and say, "I'll get right back to you." 1 year later, he'd call back and we'd go through the same thing again. And this happened a few times, and that customer probably never got their service management application. So I asked myself, why? Why is it so difficult, especially for an industry that takes devices that were never meant to work together, right? That's what we do. We put square pegs in round holes all day long. So why was it such an issue to get this software installed and make a connection to it? And my conclusion is that because it's software. It's a software-defined system. So in AV, give us a black box, and we're off to the races. We'll figure out how it works, we'll connect it to other black boxes, and we will build you a system. But something that is software defined has a different process to it that we're maybe not all that familiar with yet. Perhaps many of you remember what a navigation system used to look like, right? It had a suction cup, you had to lick it and clamp it to a windshield. How many people do not have a smartphone? So everybody here now has a navigation system, maybe even 2 or 3, in their pocket, right? And the next time you upgrade your cell phone contract and get a new smartphone, you'll still have a couple of navigation systems on there. It's a software-defined solution. So in the past, it was always a software application, but it needed purpose-built hardware to run. It needed that suction cup, otherwise it didn't work. And now it could run anywhere. And this is kind of a new world for us. It opens up all sorts of questions. Who will install the software? Where will it be installed? On what network will it be installed? Can I use a Raspberry Pi? Do I need an enterprise-grade server? These are kind of new questions that we've never had to answer before. And on top of that, when we talk about software defined, we can't ignore the cloud. So cloud computing is also another thing to consider. And this is an application diagram for how Amazon Alexa works. So on the bottom left, you have your devices that are on the local network. They connect up to a manufacturer cloud. And then over here on the other side, you have the Alexa device, which is doing the same thing. It's connecting to a manufacturer cloud, and those clouds are talking to each other and exchanging information on behalf of a user. In AV, if we wanted to take advantage of an IoT application, how would our stuff connect to that? How would we integrate the internet? Now, AV devices have been using the network to communicate for a long time, right? It's nothing new. Video displays, audio systems, even lighting systems, automation and control processors, they could communicate on the local network, no problem. But many of them still use unauthenticated and unencrypted protocols, meaning there's no login and the communication happens over plain text. So anybody with a very simple monitoring tool can see exactly what's being exchanged back and forth and maybe inject their own commands and do some funny business. The point is, these systems were never intended to talk with the internet. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Enough of them where it is a concern. How are we going to get these things online if we were to integrate with some internet applications? So to do that, we need a gateway. We need a device that does talk with the internet to build local connections to those devices and funnel things out to a cloud application. Great. Now we know how to do it. Why would we want to? So what this can do for us is give us an opportunity to remotely monitor and control devices that were never intended to speak with the internet. We could have a hook into our systems and see all of our projects, if they're online, offline. We could do some light control. We can perhaps even poll for serial numbers. So support is nice and easy. From a help desk, you could see the serial number of a display that's having problems instead of having to actually go look behind the display and do that physical work of going on site and figuring things out. So it can make your workflows a lot more efficient. We could get notifications when certain parameters are met. The typical one is lamp projector hours, although technology has kind of gone beyond that. But if a device throws an error or if it goes offline, we can be informed when that happens in real time and react to it, instead of waiting for the customer to try to use the system and discover that something isn't happening. And the most powerful part of this all is we could collect data, because data is flowing through this system. We have the cloud, we have the scalability of the cloud, so data can be stored somewhere and analyzed later to make beautiful looking charts so you really understand how your systems are being used. I know that a lot of university technology managers, they have this conversation, do we still need a VCR in our classrooms? And that decision is usually made based on a feeling. I think we do. This one professor says we do. And now you could really base that decision on data. You could say in the last 5 years it's been used twice. We don't need it anymore. And the final part of this is being able to integrate with other internet services. Things like Amazon Alexa or IFTTT or whatever, some kind of a calendar application, collaboration tools like Zoom and Skype for Business. We could get a hook into those systems and start automating our systems in the background without having a touch panel or user interaction. When a call is started, do some routing, turn the television on, set up the audio system. And when I talk to a lot of integrators about this, I hear sometimes, no way. My customers will not allow an internet connection, no cloud, absolutely not. And for the most part, it's just not true. So many organizations rely on cloud services every single day to do business. I mean, just look at these logos. There's 3 of them that have the cloud right in the logo. And these are very common applications that are used all the time. So what's the difference? Well, those are products. And a product has a different life cycle than a system does. So in a system, it's installed. Maybe there's some maintenance that happens, and either it'll reach end of life and be disposed, or it'll be refreshed and new components will be installed and updated. And what happens a lot in AV is that we get to version 1, and that's the end of the story. The system is planned, it's commissioned, it's installed. Maybe there's some training, maybe there's even some fine tuning, but the entire life cycle is normally not considered. And when you have an internet connection, it provides a real opportunity and maybe even a responsibility to consider the entire life cycle. Because with that internet connection, if a security vulnerability is ever discovered, you're going to need a way to update your systems with security patches. And the opportunity, of course, is for managed services so that you could really have a long-term relationship with the system. Make sure it's installed properly, make sure that you're proactively supporting it, collecting data, and that you're ready for the next refresh cycle, that you have real data that can help you do the planning for the next time around. For more information about these ideas, please have a listen to my podcast. It's called Software Defined Survival. It's available on the all the podcast platforms, and softwaredefinesurvival.com. My name is Patrick Murray. Thanks for listening, and have a safe trip home. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, of course. Yes. Just make sure you talk into it.
Okay, is that working? Are there any GDPR concerns with
Of course.
capturing this data?
Yeah, absolutely.
What would be the mitigation for that?
Well, it depends on what your terms and conditions are, right? And in this case, you need the data to deliver the service. So if part of the contract is that you're providing charts in it, for an example, or reports on how the system was being used, then you must collect that data to deliver your service. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so please check with your lawyer because GDPR is a rather large legislation, but that would be the use case, right? We're not collecting it for fun. How it is being used is absolutely important, something to consider. What kind of information is being collected? Is it personally identifiable? That's a very big deal. So if you're integrating with a calendar and you're collecting some other data, there may be a way to line that up and see who is using the room at a certain time. And those are things you absolutely need to be careful about. So speak with your lawyers and just be aware of why. Make sure you have a reason why you're collecting that data. And have a way to delete it. So you really need a way to sort out that data. If it's all in the same database and one customer says, I'd like it all to be deleted, or I'd like an export of it so I have it for my own records, you need to have a way to sort that out and perform those functions. So definitely a great point, things to be considered for sure. Anyone else? Questions? Come on, Kim. All right, well, I'll be hanging around for a few minutes. If anybody wants to have a chat, I'd be happy to do that too. Thanks again.